Hello everyone. So our topic is about the wholesale price index and consumer price index. But before that, let's know about the basics related to these two. So you all know the inflation is the rise in prices over the period of time. It can be monthly, it can be yearly, it can be anything. So we just need to calculate the inflation, right? So there are a few methods like wholesale inflation as well as the retail wholesale inflation as well as consumer level inflation. So wholesale inflation is a inflation which is tracked the inflation at the seller level, the person who is selling. So you need to also know about the wholesaler and who is actually retailer, right? So wholesaler is a person who sells the bulk goods to the people. They are not directly sold to the consumers, rather they are sold to the intermediaries, which who are also called as middlemen, right? So you can see here in the diagram. So wholesaler does not directly deal with the consumer, rather this wholesaler sell it to the middleman, and then middlemen are acted as a the business transactor. Like these are the persons who are retailers who will directly sell to the consumer, right? So whereas in case of without intermediaries, then that can be called as a consumer level or retail inflation. So here the retailer is directly seller to the consumer. There is no intermediary. So the person who is directly dealing with the consumer is called as retailer, whereas the person who deals with the middleman rather than directly dealing with the consumer and selling in a bulk amount, it is called as the wholesaler, right? So this inflation can be tracked at the wholesaler side as well as at the retailer level. So if it is tracked at the wholesaler level, so that is called as wholesale price index, right? So the inflation tracked at the wholesaler level is called as wholesale inflation. And if the inflation is tracked at the retailer level, right, so who's directly deal with the consumer, so that inflation is called as the consumer price index, right? Or you can also take retail inflation, right? So both are same. This is the basic difference you need to understand between the retail seller as well as the wholesale seller. And the difference is also need to be understood between the consumer price index and then wholesale price index, right? But anyway, both the intention of consumer price index as well as retailer price index is to track the inflation, right? Just the difference at the which point they are calculating, it differentiates both wholesale price index as well as consumer price index. Now, yeah, yes. So let's know about the consumer price index. As I said just before, that it is tracked at the, at the retailer level, right? Who are the persons who sell directly to the consumers, right? So that is called as a consumer price index. And earlier, before 2014, the inflation of the country is decided based on the wholesale price index. But this is not actually the true reflection, because the inflation has to be calculated at the consumer level so that we know what is the intensity of inflation on the or intensity or impact of inflation on the consumer side. So that's why the central bank RBI has shifted the inflation calculation based on the consumer price index from wholesale price index in 2014. So this is also one important point to be remembered. And the when we come to the calculation part, the consumer price index. So how this consumer price index is calculated? So you all know inflation is nothing but change in prices from one point to other point. So CPI has certain goods, not all the goods are considered, but yes, at the rural level, the basket consists of 448 goods. This is so very important. And at the urban point of urban consumer price index, we have 460 items. So they calculate the prices of all these goods, multiplication of the production, right? Or if it is wholesale, and at the retail, if it is the person who directly sells to the consumer. So generally, their number of goods multiplied by the prices they will see in this particular date, and they compare the same one with the last month CPA or last year, whatever it required, right? So they calculate this amount of rise in prices with relation to the past trends, right? So the CPI basket has 448 goods or items, whereas the urban basket of CPI has 460 items. So you can remember that urban items are more than rural items. And the CPI index is published by National Statistical Office under the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, right? So this is about the CPI. Also, coming back to the wholesale price index. So as we have seen, this is calculated at the producers level, right? So whoever is selling the goods in a bulk manner. This is also called as headline inflation because this excludes, right? So this includes the food prices, fuel, all these things which are volatile in nature, right? So the core inflation excludes the food items, fuel, which are volatile in nature, but wholesale price index calculates based on the inclusion of the volatile, right? So that's why it is also called as the headline inflation, right? And it consists of 697 items for both rural as well as urban, because here the producers are the ones we are taking. It is not the consumers. So you no need to differentiate between the rural and urban nature. So both the basket together have 697 items, right? And it is published by Office of Economic Advisor under Ministry of Commerce and Industry. So this is a very important point. Earlier, Consumer Price Index was calculated and published by the Ministry of Statistics, but here we have Office of Economic Advisor under Ministry of Commerce, right? So if you see the WPI basket here, the most of the dominant one are manufactured products, right? So whatever manufacturing, toys, all the goods, like whatever involved in the manufacturing, right? Because wholesale price index is calculated at the producer level, and for producer it is more of manufacturing. It is not about the food they don't consume, rather they are directly producing it. So most of the dominant ones are manufacturing products, which consist of 64% approximately, right? So this is the dominant one, followed by food articles 15.30, right? Now if you take the comparison with the CPI, right? So we have seen already manufactured products are the dominant one in the WPI index, the wholesale price index. But whereas in consumer price index, the dominant ones are food and beverages. So this is a very, very important one, the difference, right? And followed by fuel and power, primary articles like food and all in the WPI. The next one here is housing, right? So first two you can remember, that will be sufficient. Now, if you see the differences, firstly, CPI is published by Ministry of Statistics, whereas WPI is published by the Ministry of Commerce and Office of Economic Advisor, right? So that is the basic difference in the publication. And the meaning, yes, we track the prices at the consumer level for the CPI, right? And whereas in case of WPI, it is tracked at the producer level, who sells the goods in the bulk manner. And frequency of publication, CPI is published every month, right? In a general manner, 14th of every month, whereas WPI, certain articles like primary articles, fuel, which are very important and volatile, they are published in the weekly basis. But generally, the whole WPI is again published for monthly basis, right? And the how this is calculated, this is also very important, like how the data is calculated of the prices of each of the good on the data production, like how much production has happened. So these are calculated from the surveys. There will be government staff which can take care of these data. So they reach out to the different households or producers, they collect data, and accordingly they publish, they give this data to the concerned ministry, right? So CPI items weights are based on household expenditure. So the data calculated at the household level. Of course, this will not be exact or accurate, the nearly we calculate, because there is a lot of discretion and the people may also forget what they have consumed, right? So this is gathered from the consumer expenditure, how they have done the expenditure in buying the goods, right? And in case of WPI, it has production value. So they will reach out to the manufacturer, the producers, and they tell that how much price did you sell. So they collect the data and give it to the concerned ministry, right? And the services case, we don't have services in the WPI index, because the reason is the services are directly generated at the consumer level. In most of the cases, there is no intermediaries. So that's why CPI, WPI does not include the services, whereas CPI, we do include the services because it at the consumer level, right? So these are the basic differences. So here from this particular topic, you need to understand how they are calculated. It is nothing but the price change over the period of time, and this is calculated based on surveys done by the government officials, right? And what is the composition of WPI, what is the dominant one, and what is the composition of CPI, and what is the dominant one, and who publishes, and when it is published, and what is the status of services, right? So there is a question also from 2020. Let's see the question as well for the practice purposes. Yes, so this is the question. You can see the 2020 question on WPI and CPI. First statement, the weightage of food in consumer price index is higher than that of the wholesale price index. So this is the first statement. The WPI does not capture the changes in the prices of services, whereas CPI does, right? And the third statement, Reserve Bank of India has now adopted WPI as its key measure of inflation and to change the key policy rate. So there was options 1, 2, 2 only, 3 only, 1, 2, 3, right? So let's see one by one. It is easy. Third statement. We have discussed this that RBI has adopted CPI index from 2014. So three statement can be eliminated and C and D are eliminated. Now we have two in the both the statements. So there is no significance for this particular statement. So it does not capture change in prices of services. Yes, true. And CPI does. This is second statement is correct. And weightage of food in consumer price index is higher. You have seen in the WPI, it is just about 20%, but in case of CPI, it is more than 45%. So first statement is also correct. Hence, answer is 1 and 2 only, right? So this is about WPI and CPI. And if you understand or if you have any queries also, you can put a comment in the video. So I will be replying to clear your queries if you have any, right? Thank you.